Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first session with Ram Dass and friends. And Ram Dass, it's so wonderful to have you here with us, and Jack. And it's been our pleasure to present you at many of our real live conferences or offline, and to have you here online where so many people can access this is really, really beautiful. I know everybody here is familiar with you both, and so I don't want to belabor any introductions, and just pass this over to you. And again, it's from all of us at Great Mystery and Evolver. Thank you.
Thank you. How is the sound from, this is Jack, from my microphone? Does that work okay?
That's great.
How is the sound? How is the sound from my end?
Good.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
So the theme of this conversation is the wise heart. And Ram Dass, you were asking me, well, how should we begin? And I said, well, how about if we start by figuring out what the heart is or what wisdom is, and go from there. And I would just say one thing to start. We live in a culture that has forgotten to listen to the heart. We listen to a lot of other things and keep ourselves very busy, planning and active and multitasking, and we don't stop to take a breath and listen in a deeper way to ourselves, to our hearts, to something. Since we're on greatmystery.org, we don't listen to Great Mystery whether it's .org or not. What do you think, Ram Dass?
Well, first of all, I want to make it clear that by heart we're not beat. We're not the physical heart. Mm-hmm. In the heart space, which is across the chest, there are a number of things that are called the heart. I know one thing, the spiritual heart. Then there's the emotional heart. And then there's the heart chakra. We've got to clean up the heart. Okay.
Can you help differentiate? Because the spiritual heart seems like it also wants to be connected to the emotional heart. If you're a bhakti and you're singing and loving, there's a spiritual dimension and an emotional dimension. How do those connect?
Well, it's interesting that love is what you usually use in Bhakti Yoga. Love is connected with the spiritual heart. And all the other emotions are in the emotional heart. The emotional heart is connected with the mind and usually the ego. Okay.
So if people want to live in a way that is both happy or joyful in a deep way and connected to life, they need to find some way in their life to listen to or be tuned to the spiritual heart.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
to that dimension of love that ties the emotional and spiritual together. Is that right?
That is so right.
Sorry, I just would like to interrupt for a second. Can you just, Ron, speak a little bit louder or maybe move a little closer to the laptop? I think we're just a little soft.
No, that's okay. Now we can talk.
Much better. Thank you.
You go ahead. Oh.
So, back to this question, because I'm here with you who are watching, as well as this great delight of sitting with Ram Dass in Hawaii, and I've put on my Hawaii shirt to be in proper form for this dance. But I'm also aware, living on the mainland and not living on the islands, how busy my life gets, and the worries and concerns and things that we all have to take care of. And with this theme of wise heart, one of the questions is, how do we tune to what you called the spiritual heart, Ram Dass, or
Yeah.
to the spiritual heart and to the love that connects spirit and emotion?
Well, we each are, many of us are in our egos, the psychological self, usually in the thinking mind. So that makes us that we are we think we're somebody up there. I think I'm Ram Dass. Then I want to move the identification from here to here, to the heart, the emotional heart. And that's usually what we use sadhana for.
Some form of practice of prayer or meditation or contemplation or yoga of some kind.
Yep, yep. I mean, one of the very quick ways is the emotional heart I think of as loving awareness. And then I state, I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. I am loving awareness. And I focus on the heart. I am loving awareness. And that's moved me from the ego to the spiritual heart.
So I have two little Ram Dass memories that are outside of that but connect to I am loving awareness. One is, and I told this story one of the last times we were together, I remember at our center in Massachusetts, in IMS in Barrie, this beautiful meditation center, that when you would come on retreat, mostly the retreats were very austere, and the focus was on selflessness and emptiness and being mindful of things as they rise and pass. But in one place in this huge center with 100 rooms in the walking room, there was still a couple of stained glass windows, one of Jesus and one of the disciples with their head leaning on Jesus. And that would be the place I would always see you walking. You'd walk back and forth between these two sweet bhakti images, and you said this was the most loving spot in the building.
Yeah.
So there's something about both the inner and the outer, about shifting identity or attention to I am loving awareness rather than I am my thoughts and fears and plans and so forth. And also maybe for some of us, finding a place, whether it's between those two beautiful stained glass windows or just walking out in the garden or nature or a corner of the room where you can sit quietly, where you are supported outwardly to make that inner move. And yes, you can do it anywhere. On the subway in New York, I'm loving awareness. But sometimes for sadhana, it also helps to have good friends or a beautiful place. Does that seem right to you?
Yeah, and for bhakti yoga, which is the yoga of the heart, it's be connected with friends, wanting to be with God, and like for example, singing together in church or in then I think if you have things like here's a mala, beads. These are the environment, because I can look at each bead and see the name of God. God bless you.
Thank you.
It's all right to say God bless you
God, to a Buddhist.
Yes.
Well, whoever it is, I accept. I accept. So you make it in this little tiny way with your mala. It becomes your temple.
Yeah.
So the other little Ram Dass moment was when somebody asked you about, here you are doing Hindu practice, but you grew up Jewish, as I did, and I was bar mitzvahed and you were, and you know, what is your relationship to the Jewish spiritual tradition? And you answered that you had, as I do, respect for the Hasids and the Kabbalah and Jewish mystical teaching, but remember you're only Jewish on your parents' side. That was your comment, which I loved. And there's something about identity that we take our history, what happened in our family or our parents, or the traumas that we've been through, and we solidify it and say, this is who I am. And when you speak of shifting from ego to spiritual heart, or from kind of small self-identity, as Suzuki Roshi's phrase, to I am loving awareness, you shift from time, we shift from time to eternity, time to timeless, from individual identity, letting go, to becoming the awareness and love that is everything and from which everything appears and disappears.
The ego works in time binding. Time to the past, the and future, and the now, and the heart I, the heart self is infinite. It's infinite. It's infinite.
You used to talk a lot about awareness, but I don't remember you using the phrase loving awareness some years ago, although you also talked a lot about love. When did you get married?
I started to think of awareness as a spiritual heart. But then I remembered my guru, and he said, Ram Dass, love everybody, love everybody. So that made me put that loving, of course, loving awareness, it might be aware of this wall. And I start, he said, love everybody, but he didn't say the wall. So, loving awareness, I'd rather the aware that the whole universe is loving. And I don't judge that's loved and that's not loved, because judging up there.
Yeah. Because judging takes you up into the egoic mind.
Yeah.
And leaves you bereft from the connection to the vastness.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I tell you a story?
Yes, please.
So years ago we went to visit my teacher Ajahn Chah together, who is this very wonderful Thai meditation master. And he started a monastery for Westerners that we also visited. And the most charismatic and successful Western nun, who was there for 5 or 6 years, left after 5 years, just disappeared one day and didn't tell anybody except that she was going. And then a year or two later she came back, and she had gone to join a charismatic Christian community and been born again, and she came back and she was full of evangelical zeal and trying to convert everybody in the monastery, but in the village and the monks and nuns, Jesus is really the way. And they got very upset, as you could imagine. The villagers especially got upset because they said, we built this Buddhist temple for these Westerners, and now they're going back and becoming Christians, and what should we do? The monks and nuns were upset, and there was a big hullabaloo about it. Yes. Yeah. So finally they decided they would go ask the master, and they all got a whole posse together and walked the 8 miles through the forest and the rice paddies and got over to the main temple and sat in front of Ajahn Chah, who of course had heard all the rumors about this, and told the story. She's back, and we all loved her, and she was so important to us, and now she's trying to convert us, and she says Jesus is the way, and what should we do about this? Very upset. And Ajahn Chah sat quietly for a little bit, and he looked up and he said, well, maybe she's right. And it just diffused everything and took it all away. Yeah, of course, there's 1,000 names for the Holy One. Maybe she's right.
Exactly.
And our views and our judgments are the thing that keep us from loving.
Yeah.
Just that.
Yeah.
And there's a freedom. You can hear, at least I heard this story, I wasn't there for it, and I just got happy because I could feel his freedom. He just wasn't willing to get stuck. But he just loved.
Well, my guru, my name means a serving God, and it's a name for Hanuman, the monkey, and we worship Hanuman because Hanuman serves God and serves God through loving God, and so my guru said he thought that Hanuman and Jesus were one, And we decided to cool it because it wouldn't sell very well. Jesus being likened to a monkey.
Oh, but Jesus is the holy expression of
Get her
the
to
sacred
change her
and the
face.
divine. That's so. In the wise heart, or in loving awareness, we'll talk about that. Let's talk about fear for a second. Is there fear in loving awareness? Fear of death, fear of loss, and so forth? Because as humans, when we live in our mind of past and future, fear arises.
Yeah. The fear is up here.
Mm.
Fear is down. It's not down here. See, this is it's cultivated in the world of fear and insecurity and because we're little individuals,
Mm-hmm.
and the individual is so the forces are around the individual, like the wind, or politics, or hunger, or things like that. The tsunami. These are all big, big things, and that's where and the ego is part of the fear, part of the incarnation of part of the incarnation. So, and the incarnation, when we die, the incarnation goes. And so the ego is pretty fearful.
Doesn't want to go.
No, it doesn't want to go. The heart, which we call many names, the soul,
True nature, Buddha nature.
Yeah, yeah. But that one is not connected with the incarnation. There, I mean, the spiritual self comes into the incarnation, takes a look at it, experiences it from a vantage point of a witness, and then finally goes out and does this so many incarnations before if I'm my soul, I've so many births and so many deaths. So what's a new one?
Well, that sense of timelessness and a freedom that we are not our bodies and we're not the particularities of this incarnation. It's this great dance of birth and death, which we know, and I know from the place of loving awareness, seems like then that I shouldn't be afraid to die. And I had all these wonderful Buddhist trainings sitting in the charnel grounds in the forest, watching bodies burn and chanting and visualizing my own death. And I thought, oh, I'm cool with this. Like those Zen masters, death, I've faced death and so forth. But then, a couple of years ago, I had all these neurological problems, and I got misdiagnosed at first. I got this wrong diagnosis that something like ALS, that I was starting to fall over, and I had tremors, and my body was not working well. And then they said, yeah, this will continue very rapidly along with dementia. You're going to lose all your mental capacities. And it wasn't in my plans. And I remember when the doctor said it to me, I came out to the car where my daughter was waiting, and she said, Dad, you don't look so good. When I told her, and she started to weep, and she said, oh, Daddy, I wanted you to be there for my children as a grandfather. But what surprised me is that I got afraid in ways that I didn't think would happen. I thought, oh, well, I could die, I'll be all right. But this great fear, and some of it was in my mind, but some of it was bodily. It's like, not only does the ego not want to go, but the body didn't want to go.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, I've failed the test.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I thought again later, maybe that's a false test. That actually that's just what incarnation does. The body wants to stay alive, or the ego,
Yeah.
and the fear comes, but that's not who we are. What do you think?
Yeah. I think that's probably pretty astute on your part. Yeah. I got the stroke, and when I came to the hospital, all my friends and my doctors and all mishpacha, all the looking with long faces, and they like I was going. And I didn't know what had happened. I was looking at the pipes on the ceilings, and I realized that if I inhabited their minds, I'm going to blow this one. Mm. But I had my own mind, but I started to I started to be depressed, and I was depressed. I don't know how long it must be that I was depressed, and I was depressed not because of the dying or the stroke, but because of I had up till then I felt I had a graced life. Mm. I had the hands of Maharaji. Before I'm going to have. He'll take care of me. Mm. And so I said in the hospital room, they put a picture of Maharaji, and I said to him, where were you when I stroked? You going up to lunch or something? and I started to lose my faith. And that loss of faith depressed me. That was the depression. That was the depression. And the stroke, I don't know whether you had this, but the stroke, I said to Maharaji, will you still grace me? And he says, I'm gracing you. And then I started to see the stroke as grace. And for example, I couldn't talk. Well, that was a graceful thing. But then another thing is like I had a book called How Can I Help? One of my books, and that was before the stroke. And now I'd write the book, How Can You Help Me? So how I wanted to see if me dependent, I've never had that exploring. I was exploring dependency on the people. And you know, if I was in the wheelchair and I come to a street crossing, waiting there, and a couple would come along and here, we'll help you. And they were so happy doing it, and I was happy having them. And it was such a beautiful, a joyful interaction. And I realized this dependency was not black, as you know.
So there's something about loving awareness and that timeless knowing, and yet also our humanity, that we have a body and an ego or a sense of separation, and we're dependent when we're little. Everybody's dependent, and we go through a cycle where we're somewhat independent, but I think it's more a fiction in our culture than the truth. We're actually interdependent, and then we become more dependent mostly. And we have a culture that doesn't like dependence. You know, you're supposed to be independent, rather than knowing that you're interdependent and that you're part of the whole.
That's good. That's good, Jack.
And somehow to quiet the mind and come back to loving awareness, you can feel that interdependence. And for me anyway, it also includes humanity. Oscar Wilde had that phrase, he called it the tainted glory of humanity.
Yeah.
That somehow there will be fear and there will be joy and there'll be all these things that make human incarnation. And somehow to learn to bow to that. You call it grace, and I think in the monastery where I practice, we just learn to bow to everything. You bow to your suffering, and you bow to your joy, and you bow to death, and bow to birth, and all of that is taken as part of the unfolding of what's holy, of life.
I looked at it another way. We humans are, we function on two planes of consciousness. And one plane will be the ego and dying and physical things. and the other plane will be the nothingness, or what are you, the Buddha nature, or things like that. And I've seen that I want to counsel people of balancing those things, because people that are so wow, so I gotta go and get God, and they don't pay their taxes, or people that pay their taxes and don't bother with God.
Yes. Yeah. So we have this dance of these like the double helix in the DNA of the human personal incarnation and the eternal and the timeless. And I remember Ajahn Chah, when he went to his teacher, he'd practiced as a monk for a number of years and doing these wild austerities in the caves and the jungles, and had all these samadhi experiences and visions and all kinds of things. And he went to see this great meditation master and told him all about that. The master shook his head and said, "You've missed the point." He said, "Well, what do you mean I missed it? I did all this work." He said, no, you have to turn and ask yourself, to whom is this happening? Who is the witness of all this? Just as you're saying. And instead of caring whether it's joyful or painful or sad or frightening or delicious, become the one who knows. That was his phrase. Become the one who knows. Become the knowing, and then the freedom of the Buddha will be yours in some way. So this is, but then the interesting thing, and it's really so much connected with what you're saying, is that when Ajahn Chah created this monastery, there was this great sense of freedom, like